The U.S. military conducted airstrikes against Islamic State operatives in Somalia. This is the first attack by the United States during President Donald Trump's second term. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said strikes targeted Islamic State Somalia operatives in the Golis Mountains in the semi-autonomous Puntland region. An initial assessment by the Pentagon indicated that multiple Islamic State operatives were killed in the attack. U.S. President, in a social media post on Truth Social, said the strike destroyed the caves of the terrorists without harming any civilians. The post further said ISIS has been on the target of the U.S. and many terrorists were killed in the attack. Somalian President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud said the operation reinforced the strong security partnership between the two countries in combating extremist threats. In a post on X, the president said Somalia remains resolute in working with its allies to eliminate international terrorism and ensure regional stability. Somalia and the U.S. have had warm relations during Biden's presidency as he redeployed troops after Trump's pullback to maintain a U.S. presence in the country, focusing on combating al-Shabaab and terrorism. He ordered the killing of ISIS leader Bilal al-Sudani in 2023. While Trump's approach in his first term included ordering airstrikes and withdrawing U.S. troops from Somalia. However, in his second term, he has slightly adjusted his strategy, resuming military action against ISIS while still maintaining that African engagement is a lower priority. Meanwhile, the Somalian forces have increased patrolling in the area. Puntland Information Minister says that its forces have managed to confine Islamic State activities to the hills and has urged the international community to supply ammunition in its fight against terrorism.
We ask the federal government to bring military supplies for it is constitutionally required. This is part of the defense of the Indian Ocean and Red Sea. Puntland has managed to stop IS from coming out the hills and infiltrating into the locals, and now Puntland is fighting IS in the hills. The federal government should bring the equipment given to Somalia, and we urge the international community is to participate in this global war also by providing us with equipment.
The Islamic State affiliate in Somalia emerged in 2015 as a breakaway faction from the al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda's East African link, and is most active in Puntland, particularly in the Galgala Mountains, where it has established hideouts and training camps and is led by Abdul Qadir Mumin. Dov Zakhaim is a former Undersecretary of Defense in George W. Bush administration and currently senior advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Zakhaim is now joining us live from D.C. Welcome to the broadcast, sir. I just want to know from you what the actions of the U.S. in Somalia indicate about Trump's administration and their approach to terrorism in regions that were minutely a target for America, that is the Horn of Africa and the Sahel.
I think you're seeing a pattern that began in the first Trump administration. He doesn't want troops on the ground, and as you mentioned, he pulled troops out of Somalia, and he may well pull troops out of parts of Europe and other places. But on the other hand, he has used airstrikes, not just in Somalia in his first term. He used an airstrike to kill the leader of the Al-Quds force, Qasem Soleimani, while he was in Baghdad. He used an airstrike to retaliate against Syrian use of chemical weapons. That was early in his first term. That was in 2017. The killing of Soleimani was in January of the last year of his first term, of 2020. And now you're seeing it again. He does not prioritize Africa, as you rightly said, but on the other hand, he does prioritize fighting terrorism, and he's fighting terrorism from the air. I don't know what kind of weapons he used. I suspect they used what's called a hyperbaric weapon, which was used in Afghanistan to blow terrorists out of caves. May have been the same here, it's not clear, but he went after the caves, he went after the leadership, and he went after them by air. And I think that may well be the pattern that you're going to see. It's not that he's not going to fight at all. He does not want to get involved in a land war. He does not want troops on the ground if he can avoid it. but he will use force, mostly from the, if not exclusively, from the air, to go after particularly terrorists, because ISIS threatens not just Somalia, but the entire Middle East region and beyond.
Mr. Zakhaim, does this indicate to you a kind of shift in approach under Trump 2.0? And do you foresee the U.S. pulling out or continuing in such volatile regions like Somalia?
Well, as I said, I do think there's a pattern here. I think what you're going to see in this administration are attacks from the air, particularly against terrorists or America's enemies more generally. But at the same time, I would not be shocked or surprised if he pulled all the rest of American troops out of Somalia. He does not prioritize Africa in the first place. And secondly, as I said, he does not really want American troops on the ground if he can possibly avoid it.
Mrs. Zakhaim, why does Trump not prioritize Africa? What makes you think that?
Well, if you look at more generally, his priority seems to be East Asia, dealing with China, number one. Europe is already, according to some of his advisors and potential nominees, a lower priority than East Asia. The Middle East remains a kind of concern. I wouldn't call it a priority in the sense of putting troops in the Middle East. And then there's Africa and Latin America. So relative to these other parts of the world, it's lower priority. But again, as I say, it depends what the issue is. If the issue is ISIS across the Sahel, I believe you will still see American operations, if not on the ground, certainly from the air, to defeat ISIS and terrorism generally.
All right, Mr. Dov Zakhaim, always great to speak to you. Thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.